I never thought I'd find myself in a situation like this. My name is Jake, and I was married to my high school sweetheart, Amanda, for nearly 7 years. We had built a life together, good jobs, a nice house in the suburbs, and even a dog named Max. From the outside, we seemed like the picture-perfect couple. But that's often how these things go, isn't it? You think everything is fine until you realize the ground beneath you is crumbling. The first sign that something was off came about a year ago. Amanda started working late at the office more frequently, which seemed innocent enough at first. I mean, it was a common occurrence in our line of work. She was a project manager at a marketing firm, and deadlines can be brutal. But then it started to feel like more than just work. She was distant, distracted, and often glued to her phone, even during dinner. I brushed it off, convincing myself that I was being paranoid. She would always say, "You know how demanding the clients are, Jake," and I wanted to believe her. But then, after a while, I began to notice little things. Her phone would buzz with messages, and she'd hurriedly stuff it in her pocket, or she'd leave the room to take calls, claiming it was about work. I couldn't shake the feeling that she was hiding something. There were nights when she'd come home late, reeking of cheap cologne that wasn't mine. I'd ask her about it, and she'd roll her eyes and snap back, "You're being ridiculous. It's just perfume from a coworker." Looking back, I should have trusted my gut. I should have pressed harder. Instead, I let it slide, thinking I was being insecure. After all, I loved Amanda. I couldn't imagine my life without her. The real turning point came when I was at the office one evening. I worked at the same company as Amanda, but in a different department. I had just wrapped up a project and decided to take a break, grabbing a soda from the vending machine. As I was walking back to my desk, I overheard two of my colleagues, Claire and Mike, chatting. They mentioned Amanda by name, and I couldn't help but eavesdrop. "She's really gotten close with that janitor, you know," Claire said, laughing. "Yeah, it's pretty wild." "I thought she was married," Mike replied, sounding incredulous. I froze. My heart dropped into my stomach. A janitor. I had seen him around. David was his name. A decent guy, but he was definitely not the kind of man I imagined my wife would be involved with. I needed to know more. That night I went home and confronted Amanda, my heart racing with fear and anger. I asked her directly if she was seeing someone else. She laughed it off, telling me I was being paranoid. But I could see the flicker of something in her eyes, a mix of guilt and defiance. Days turned into weeks, and the tension in our home turned thick. I couldn't shake the feeling that she was lying to me, so I did the only thing I thought would help. I began to do some digging. I checked our phone records and found odd numbers listed, ones I didn't recognize. It felt invasive, but I was desperate for answers. Eventually, I stumbled upon a message on her phone when she accidentally left it open one evening. It was a conversation between her and David. They were discussing meeting up, and I could feel the world spinning around me as I read their flirtatious exchanges. It was all spelled out in black and white, my worst fears confirmed. She was cheating on me. I was devastated. The sense of betrayal hit me like a freight train. How could she do this to me? How could she throw away our life together for someone like him? I felt nauseous, heartbroken, and infuriated all at once. And that's when the storm of emotions inside me began to build, a mix of sorrow and a growing desire for revenge. I knew I had to confront her, but I wanted to do it on my terms. I'd come to learn that the best revenge isn't always about retaliation in the moment. Sometimes it's about playing the long game. So, with a twisted sense of resolve, I started plotting my next steps, determined to ensure she saw every bit of my success while I moved onward from the wreckage of our marriage. I would not be the one left broken. To be continued. The confrontation with Amanda was inevitable, and it loomed over me like a dark cloud. I spent days rehearsing what I wanted to say, imagining the shock on her face when I laid everything out. I had the evidence. I felt like I was armed with the truth, which was supposed to be my ally. But the closer I got to confronting her, the more I could feel the swell of anxiety. I knew this would change everything. It was a Friday evening when I decided to take the plunge. Amanda came home late, stumbling in with an air of casualness that made my blood boil. She didn't even notice the tension hanging between us. Instead, she kicked off her shoes, threw her purse on the table, and headed straight to the kitchen to pour herself a glass of wine. "Hey, how was your day?" she asked, her voice cheerful and naive. I took a deep breath. "We need to talk," I said, my voice steady despite the churning in my stomach. Her smile faltered as she turned to face me. "What about?" I pulled out my phone and opened the messages. "About this," I said, showing her the screen where their flirtation was laid bare. "Care to explain?" Her face drained of color, and for a moment I saw genuine fear in her eyes. "Jake, I can explain." She stammered, but her voice was shaky and I could see her scrambling to come up with some excuse. I didn't let her get away with it. "Explain what? That you've been screwing around with the janitor, that you've been lying to me for months. What possible explanation could make this okay?" She paced the room, tears welling up in her eyes. "It's not what you think. David and I are just friends. He listens to me when I talk about work, Jake. You've been so distant lately and I needed someone. I interrupted, my voice rising. "You needed someone to fuck, that's what you needed." I could see the realization dawn on her that her excuses were failing. I watched as she shifted from panic to anger. "You don't understand. I've been unhappy too. This isn't just about you." The words hit me like a slap. "Unhappy? Is that why you decided to cheat? Because you weren't getting what you wanted from me? You couldn't come to me and talk about it. I didn't think it would come to this," she cried, her voice breaking. I thought I could handle it on my own, but I wasn't interested in what she thought anymore. I had seen enough. The betrayal was too deep and I felt a sense of clarity wash over me. This wasn't the marriage I had invested my heart in. I had given Amanda my all and she had thrown it away without a second thought. "I can't believe you," I said, shaking my head in disbelief. "I thought we had something real, something worth fighting for, but clearly I was wrong." I turned away from her, the anger boiling in my chest. As I paced the living room, I felt a mix of rage and sorrow. The reality of what we had built together was crumbling and I had to face it. I couldn't keep living like this, pretending everything was fine while she was out betraying me. In the days that followed, I found myself in a whirlwind of emotions. Anger turned to sadness, and sadness morphed into a relentless determination. I had been pushed to my limits, and now it was time for me to pivot. I had to find a way to take control of my life again. Instead of wallowing in the heartbreak, I started to focus on my career. I had always been ambitious, but I had let my marriage take precedence over my professional aspirations. Now, I was determined to climb the corporate ladder, and I wanted Amanda to see every bit of my success. I began staying late at work, volunteering for projects and networking with higher-ups. The more I immersed myself in my work, the more I found clarity. I was starting to feel like my old self again, the Jake who had goals and dreams beyond the confines of his marriage. Week by week, I noticed myself leveling up, both in my job and personally. I cleaned up my appearance, started hitting the gym, and even reconnected with friends I had neglected over the years. I was becoming a version of myself that I had forgotten existed, and it felt invigorating. Amanda, on the other hand, was watching all of this unfold. I could see the shifts in her behavior. She was either sulking in the corner or trying to engage with me, but I wasn't having any of it. I was done being the passive partner in this marriage. I was reclaiming my power, and she was left to contemplate the consequences of her actions. As I pushed ahead, I became more focused. I would make sure that she saw just how much I could achieve without her. I wanted her to feel every bit of the regret for her choices. And while I was putting my plan into action, I still felt the sting of betrayal, but it was becoming easier to bear. To be continued. The weeks rolled on, and I found myself enveloped in a new routine that didn't involve Amanda. It felt liberating. The thrill of putting my energy into my work, working late nights, and climbing the corporate ladder became my new obsession. With every late-night project I completed, I could feel my confidence surge, and I found myself enjoying my life again. The stark contrast between my renewed vigor and Amanda's increasingly desperate attempts to connect with me was almost comical. I could see the panic on her face as I pulled away, and it was evident she didn't know how to handle it. She would ask me about my day, trying to engage me in conversations that felt more like interviews than genuine discussions. I'd give her short answers and watch her frustration grow. One evening, after an especially long day at work, I returned home to find Amanda in the living room staring blankly at the TV. She looked up as I entered, and I could see the fatigue etched on her face. "You've been working a lot lately," she said, her tone half-hearted. "Yeah, I've been busy," I replied, shrugging it off. I wasn't interested in small talk. I was focused on my plans and how to execute them. "I think we need to talk about us, Jake. This distance, it's not good," she said, her voice trembling slightly. I turned to her, crossing my arms over my chest. "What's there to talk about? You made your choices, Amanda. You decided to cheat on me with David. What could we possibly discuss that would change that?" Her expression shifted from frustration to desperation. "I know, and I regret it. I've made a terrible mistake. Can't you see that?" "No," I said flatly. "I can't." The words hung between us like a loaded gun. I could see the tears pooling in her eyes, but I had reached a point of emotional detachment. I wasn't here to comfort her. I was here to reclaim my life. I had a promotion coming up at work, and it was the talk of the office. My hard work was paying off, and I was ready to step into a role that would give me the recognition I deserved. It was a significant leap, and I wanted Amanda to see it. I wanted her to realize what she was losing by pushing me away. The day of the announcement came, and the atmosphere was electric. I had been called into my boss's office along with a few others. I remember sitting there, trying to maintain my composure while the others around me buzzed with excitement. When my boss, Lisa, finally called my name, I felt a rush of adrenaline. "Congratulations, Jake. You're being promoted to senior project manager. Your hard work has not gone unnoticed." The applause that followed filled me with a sense of validation I hadn't felt in a long time. I could hardly believe I was finally getting the recognition I had worked so hard for. As I walked out of the office, a wave of satisfaction washed over me. I was no longer the man weighed down by betrayal. No, I was now a man on the rise, and I wanted Amanda to see every bit of it. That evening I came home feeling like a new person. I walked through the door, and Amanda was there waiting, her face full of anticipation. "How was work?" she asked, her tone hopeful. I didn't beat around the bush. "I got the promotion," I said, trying to keep my demeanor calm, but the exhilaration was hard to hide. Her eyes widened, and I could see a flicker of jealousy mixed with surprise. "You did? That's amazing, Jake. I knew you could do it." "Yeah, it is," I replied, keeping my tone neutral. "But it also means I'll be working even more hours and taking on more responsibilities. I'll have less time for distractions." Her smile faltered, and I realized I had struck a nerve. "Distractions? What do you mean by that?" I leaned against the kitchen counter, letting the words sink in. "I mean I won't be dealing with any more petty arguments or excuses. I've got bigger fish to fry now." The realization that I was moving on and thriving without her hit her hard. I could see it on her face. The guilt and regret morphed into something darker, resentment, but I didn't care. I was no longer the broken man who had been blindsided by betrayal. I was rising above it, and that felt empowering. As I settled into my new role, I couldn't help but notice Amanda's shifts in behavior. She tried to put on a brave face, but I could see the cracks forming. She became increasingly moody, and the guilt she felt manifested in passive-aggressive remarks. "You're spending so much time at work, Jake. Is it really worth it?" I would simply shrug, focusing on the positive changes in my life. I wasn't going to let her negativity bring me down. Instead, I began networking with colleagues, attending after-work events, and even making connections with higher-level executives. I wanted to ensure my success was visible to Amanda, and I was determined to show her what she had lost. One night, I attended a corporate mixer, and as I mingled, I couldn't help but notice how easily people gravitated toward me. I felt confident, charismatic, and alive. I even caught the eye of one of the executive assistants, Sarah, who seemed genuinely interested in me. We chatted, and I felt an undeniable chemistry. As the night progressed, I made sure to take a few pictures with Sarah and my other colleagues, posting them on social media. I wanted Amanda to see how well I was doing, how many opportunities were opening up for me now that I was free of her weight. I wasn't trying to be cruel. I was simply showing her the reality of my new life. When I got home that night, I found Amanda sitting on the couch scrolling through her phone. I could sense her unease as I walked in, and I relished the power shift. "You went out," she asked, trying to sound casual but failing miserably. Yeah, just a little mixer, I said, a grin creeping onto my face. Met some new people, it was great. She looked up from her phone and I could see her jaw clench. You didn't invite me. It was a work thing, Amanda. Maybe next time. I could practically see the gears turning in her mind as she tried to process the situation. I was moving on and she was being left behind, and it felt fantastic. To be continued. As the days turned into weeks, the atmosphere in our home grew tenser. I could see the stress wearing on Amanda as she struggled to cope with my newfound independence and success. She would attempt to be supportive, offering congratulations for my promotion, but her efforts felt forced. I could tell she was grappling with her feelings of guilt and jealousy, and it gave me a sense of satisfaction. I continued to engage with my colleagues, and my professional connections flourished. I found myself invited to more events where I could showcase my skills and foster new relationships. I even started to work closely with Sarah, the executive assistant I had met at the mixer. She was bright, enthusiastic, and a breath of fresh air compared to the tension I felt at home with Amanda. During one of our late-night work sessions, Sarah and I slipped into friendly banter, and I felt something spark between us. It was exhilarating, the idea that I could connect with someone again without the baggage of betrayal hovering over us. We laughed, talked about our professional aspirations, and shared a mutual understanding of the challenges we both faced in our careers. One evening after a particularly long day, Sarah asked if I wanted to grab a drink. It was innocent enough, but I could feel the thrill of possibility. I texted Amanda, letting her know I was working late, and then I headed out with Sarah. We found ourselves at a trendy bar downtown, sharing stories over cocktails. I felt alive. It was a taste of freedom I hadn't experienced in a long time. Sarah was easy to talk to, and I found myself leaning in, laughing at her jokes and feeling the weight of my past lift just a little more. As the night went on, I sensed the chemistry between us intensifying. At one point, she leaned in closer, her eyes sparkling with mischief. You know, I've seen how hard you've been working. You deserve to celebrate your success, Jake. I chuckled, trying to play it cool even as my heart raced. Thanks, Sarah. It feels good to finally be recognized for my efforts. It was in that moment, as we locked eyes, that I felt a shift within me. I realized how much I longed for connection, for partnership, something I had thought was lost forever with Amanda. But more importantly, I understood that I was no longer the victim of my circumstances. I was reclaiming my life inch by inch. Back at home, Amanda was waiting for me, her eyes narrowed as I opened the door. You're late, she snapped, clearly having figured out I wasn't just working. I took a deep breath, preparing for the confrontation I knew was coming. Work took longer than I expected. Work, or were you out with that assistant? She accused, her voice laced with bitterness. Would it even matter? I shot back, irritation flaring up like a flame. You lost the right to question me when you decided to cheat. I'm not going to answer to you anymore. Her expression shifted from anger to disbelief, clearly taken aback by my boldness. I can't believe you throw that in my face. I'm trying to apologize and make this better. I stepped closer, my heart pounding. You can't just say you're sorry and expect everything to go back to normal, Amanda. You've shattered trust, and now you're facing the consequences. She looked down, her shoulders slumping as the weight of my words sank in. I know I messed up. I'm trying to change, Jake. Can't you see that? But I was done with empty promises and half-hearted attempts to fix what couldn't be repaired. I had learned that I could only rely on myself and that I wanted more than what she had to offer. I don't think you can change, Amanda. You've shown me who you really are. Her reaction was a mix of despair and anger. You're being cruel. You're just going to throw me away like I'm nothing. No, I'm choosing to prioritize myself for once. I deserve happiness too. I could see the tears welling in her eyes, but I didn't back down. Instead, I felt a surge of strength. In the days that followed, I dedicated myself even more to my work and my own journey. I realized that moving forward meant focusing on myself, building connections, and not allowing Amanda's guilt to drag me back into a toxic cycle. I poured myself into my projects, sought mentorship from higher-ups, and continued nurturing the budding connection with Sarah. One day during a lunch break, I received exciting news. I had been nominated for a prestigious industry award, which was a huge recognition of my work. When I shared the news with my team, everyone erupted into cheers, and I felt a sense of pride wash over me. This was my moment, the culmination of my hard work and dedication, and I wanted Amanda to witness it. That evening, I returned home to find Amanda sitting at the dining table, her expression a mix of determination and uncertainty. "I need to talk to you," she said, her voice shaky but resolute. "About what?" I asked, knowing full well where this was headed. "I've been doing a lot of thinking. I want to go to couples therapy. We can fix this." I shook my head, feeling a mix of pity and frustration. "You think therapy will magically fix everything? You broke my trust, Amanda. I'm not sure I can ever get past that. But I love you. I want to fight for us," she implored, her voice rising as desperation crept in. I took a deep breath, the weight of her words heavy. "In the air. You had your chance to fight for us and you chose to walk away. I'm not going to keep putting myself in a position to be hurt again." Her shoulders slumped, and the realization of my resolve hit her like a brick. For the first time, I saw genuine fear in her eyes, not the fear of losing me, but the fear of facing the consequences of her choices. "I'm sorry," she whispered, tears streaming down her cheeks. But I was already miles away from that moment, focused on my own path forward. As I left the room, I felt a mix of emotions swirling within me. Sadness for what could have been, but relief for choosing a future I wanted rather than clinging to a broken past. I was ready for what lay ahead, determined to embrace the opportunities that awaited me. To be continued. With Amanda's desperate plea still echoing in my mind, I felt a wave of conflicting emotions wash over me. In her eyes, I could see the remnants of the woman I once loved. But in her actions, I now saw someone who had betrayed me too deeply to ever regain my trust. As painful as it was, I was ready to let go of the past and focus on my future. Over the next few weeks, I continued to embrace my professional growth. The award nomination created a buzz around the office, and I found myself at the center of attention. I enjoyed the recognition, but more importantly, I savored the feeling of being valued. My confidence soared as I delivered presentations, networked with industry leaders, and made a name for myself. I was no longer the man defined by my relationship with Amanda. I was Jake, an ambitious professional who was determined to succeed. While my career flourished, the tension at home with Amanda remained palpable. She had given up on her attempts to win me back, and I could sense her frustration growing as she watched me change. I focused on my work, often staying late and spending evenings out with colleagues. I wanted to thrive in my new role, but I also wanted Amanda to understand the depth of her mistakes. One Friday, I attended an awards gala where my work was being celebrated. I dressed sharply, putting on my best suit. As I stepped out of the house, I glanced back at Amanda. She looked small and lost, sitting on the couch wrapped in a blanket, waiting for me to leave. Part of me felt guilty, but I quickly shook that feeling off. She had made her choices, and now it was time for me to make mine. The gala was everything I'd hoped for and more. As I mingled with colleagues and industry professionals, I felt a sense of belonging I hadn't experienced in years. When it came time for the awards ceremony, my heart raced. I sat at a table with Sarah and a few other colleagues, sharing laughs and excitement as the night unfolded. When my name was finally called for the award, I felt like I was floating. I walked to the stage with a confident stride, the spotlight illuminating my face. As I accepted the award, the applause enveloped me, and I took a moment to soak it all in. This was validation for my hard work and my determination to rise above the betrayal. After the ceremony, I found myself surrounded by well-wishers, and I couldn't help but feel a sense of pride. I had transformed my pain into success, and it felt incredible. In the midst of the celebrations, I caught a glimpse of Sarah across the room. She was smiling, her eyes bright with admiration. The chemistry we had started to blossom into something deeper, and I was excited to explore it. As the night continued, I found myself drawn to her. We chatted, and I could feel the connection growing stronger between us. As the evening wrapped up, she leaned in closer, brushing her fingers against my arm. Congratulations again, Jake. You truly deserve this. Thanks, Sarah, I replied, feeling a spark. I wouldn't have made it here without the support from my team. I could see the way she looked at me, and in that moment I felt a rush of emotions. I was ready to explore this new chapter in my life, and it felt liberating. I wasn't just moving on from Amanda, I was embracing my future. When I returned home that night, I felt a mixture of joy and trepidation. Amanda was still awake, sitting in the dim light of the living room. I could see a glass of wine in her hand, clearly having chosen to drown her sorrows. How was it? She asked, her voice flat. It was amazing, I replied, a smile breaking across my face. I won the award. Her reaction was muted, a slight nod of acknowledgement, but I could sense the undercurrent of bitterness. That's great, Jake, I'm happy for you. I could see the struggle within her. She wanted to sound supportive, but the jealousy seeped through. You seem to have moved on just fine, she said, her tone laced with sarcasm. Yeah, I have, I responded, no longer trying to hide the truth. I'm focusing on my career and what makes me happy. You're doing this to hurt me, aren't you? She accused, her voice rising. No, I'm doing this for me, I shot back, my patience wearing thin. You had your chance to be a part of my life, Amanda. You made your choices, and now I'm making mine. That was the moment I realized I wasn't just moving on, I was thriving. And Amanda was left behind, grappling with the fallout of her own decisions. I could see her struggling to find her footing as I stepped further into my new world. The following weeks passed with a whirlwind of activity. I continued to work closely with Sarah, and our bond deepened. We shared late nights at the office, brainstorming ideas and celebrating each other's victories. There was a lightness in our interactions that I hadn't felt in ages, and it was refreshing. Amanda, on the other hand, was stuck in a cycle of resentment. I could see how my success was eating away at her, but I refused to let her negativity drag me down. I focused on my goals, and with each achievement I felt more empowered. One evening, as I was preparing to head out for drinks with Sarah, Amanda confronted me. "Are you going to see her again?" she asked, her voice trembling with a mix of anger and vulnerability. "It's none of your business," I replied, trying to remain calm. "It is my business. You're still my husband, and I deserve to know what's going on in your life." I turned to her, feeling a mixture of pity and anger. "You lost that right when you decided to cheat on me. I'm not going to let you control my life anymore." For the first time, I stood tall in my decision. I was no longer defined by my marriage to Amanda. I was choosing to pursue the happiness I deserved. As I left for drinks that night, I felt lighter. I was ready to embrace this new chapter without the weight of the past holding me back. I was moving on, and I was determined to make the most of the opportunities before me. To be continued. The weeks turned into months, and the chasm between Amanda and me widened. I was fully immersed in my new role at work, and the thrill of my accomplishments overshadowed the pain of my past. My connection with Sarah blossomed into something beautiful, and I found myself genuinely happy for the first time in a long while. There was laughter, support, and a sense of belonging that I had desperately missed. Amanda, on the other hand, continued to spiral. The bitterness in her gaze deepened each time I came home, recounting the day's victories. The more I thrived, the more she retreated into her own bitterness. It became evident that she was struggling to cope with the choices she had made. One evening, I returned home. Dinner with Sarah, feeling elated after a great night out. As I walked in, Amanda was sitting on the couch, her expression unreadable. I could sense the heaviness in the air. "Jake, can we talk?" she asked, her voice shaky. I hesitated, knowing that every time we spoke it usually led to more heartache. "What is it?" "I've been doing some thinking about us," she began, her tone cautious. I crossed my arms over my chest, bracing myself for whatever was to come. "And I realize I messed up. I see how far you've come, how hard you've worked, and I understand that I pushed you away. I don't want to lose you, I want to make this right." I felt a mix of emotions as I listened to her words. Part of me wanted to believe her, to think that she was genuine, but my heart had learned to protect itself. "Amanda, it's too late for that. You made your choice when you decided to cheat with David. I can't just forget that. Please," she pleaded, tears streaming down her cheeks. "I want to fight for us. I'm willing to do anything." I took a deep breath, searching for the right words. It's not just about fighting for us, it's about trust, and you shattered that completely. I can't go back to who we were, and I don't want to just pretend that everything is fine." Her expression shifted from desperation to anger. "So that's it? You're just going to throw me away after everything?" I shook my head, feeling the weight of the situation. "I'm not throwing you away, Amanda. I'm choosing to move forward with my life. I deserve to be happy, and I can't do that with the constant reminder of what you did." As I spoke, I felt a sense of liberation. I had spent too long living in the shadow of her choices, and now it was finally time to embrace my own path. The world was opening up for me, and I wasn't going to let anyone hold me back. "I can change," she insisted, her voice breaking. "I'll go to therapy. I'll do whatever it takes." But even as she spoke, I could see the desperation in her eyes, and I knew her promises were hollow. "I don't think that will ever be enough, Amanda. I've already started to rebuild my life, and it doesn't include you." With those words, I felt a weight lift from my shoulders. It was a painful truth, but it was also a liberating one. I was finally reclaiming my life. The next day, I made arrangements to move out. I felt a sense of peace as I packed my belongings, knowing it was the right decision. My friends and colleagues rallied around me, offering support and encouragement. I wasn't alone in this, and I was more determined than ever to create a future filled with happiness. As I settled into my new apartment, it felt like a fresh start. I decorated the space with memories of my success and filled it with positive energy. I began to see life differently, embracing each day with optimism and excitement. I connected with Sarah more deeply, and we found joy in each other's company. It felt good to be appreciated and valued again. Months later, I received the award for my industry recognition at a conference. As I stood on stage, the applause echoed in my ears, and I felt a rush of gratitude. This was more than just an achievement, it was a testament to my resilience. As I looked out into the crowd, I saw familiar faces, colleagues, friends, and Sarah smiling back at me with pride. I felt a sense of belonging I had longed for, and in that moment I knew I was finally free. After the ceremony, I made my way through the crowd, greeting everyone who had supported me. As I turned a corner, I spotted Amanda in the audience, her eyes filled with a mix of emotions. She attempted to approach me, but I could see the uncertainty in her posture. "Jake," she called out, but I continued walking. I didn't owe her anything anymore. I had moved on, and I wasn't looking back. In the months that followed, I embraced my new life with open arms. I learned to love again, not just in a romantic sense, but in every aspect: friendships, career, and my personal growth. Each day was an opportunity to create a better version of myself. I had faced betrayal and heartbreak, but I emerged stronger. I had learned to cherish my own happiness and prioritize my journey, and as I looked forward to the future, I felt a sense of hope and excitement for what was yet to come. I was no longer just surviving, I was thriving.